Bar Wars 2, The Woodman Strikes Back is pretty incredible, very well written, completely unpredictable. This is the 10th episode of the 7th season of Cheers. This is directed, of course, by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And the first time I watched Cheers in its entirety, the Bar Wars episodes never really appealed to me. But rewatching it, I found that that's actually not the case. I'm really enjoying it. This one definitely was a little bit slow to begin with, but the second half is just absolutely phenomenal. It starts off with Carla and Lilith is talking about how she has to indulge in one of Frasier's fantasies, so Carla tells her one of Eddie's fantasies where she has to dress up as a fairy princess, so Lilith finally explains that Frasier likes to regress. Honestly, the description doesn't really sound that much like something Frasier would do, but nevertheless, this is the situation, and I think quite predictably, probably the only predictable thing in this episode, Carla was making it up to get Lilith to spill, and Lilith ends up running after Carla, and it's a fun way to start things off. The rest of the episode is all about the Bar Wars. And this is the Bloody Mary contest, where various local establishments enter the contest with their best Bloody Mary. And Sam is forcing Norm to drink it. They've clearly been working on this for quite some time. They're planning on adding black cardamom to it, but Woody kind of accidentally sneezes it everywhere, so that's no longer a viable option. And then Rebecca comes in and she's managed to get hold of some of Gary's top secret Bloody Mary mix, and unfortunately everybody samples it and they all admit that it tastes absolutely brilliant. Gary then comes over with some towels for them to cry into when they lose, taunting them, and needless to say that's just adding fuel to the fire. A little while later Frasier then comes in and they realise on the television that there is Gary and then them. They had planted, Gary or somebody else had planted a camera in Cheers to record them saying all of these really great things about Gary's Bloody Mary. And I have to say, it was very funny. And just their faces when they realised this, I rather enjoyed. So they have to come up with a plan, but they are concerned that the bar is bugged. So they try and go outside to discuss this plan. And I think from roughly this point, this is when I started to really enjoy the narrative and I was really keen to see what would happen. It's also worth pointing out that my memory is terrible, so I couldn't remember what the plan was. And the execution of this from this point on to the end of the episode is just absolutely fantastic. So they have this plan and it turns out that Woody ends up hanging upside down from the door at Cheers, and they blame him for messing the plan up. He was supposed to go over there in disguise, which he did, but he decided to go over as a nun, which kind of gave the game away. And he's heartbroken, seemingly heartbroken, that they've treated him like this. He did his best, but they're outraged at him, they're so annoyed at him, so he decides, fine, I'm never coming back to Cheers. He goes over to Gary's, and I realised then that when he went over, this must be a plan that he has. But I wasn't sure what the plan was. And he ends up getting a job at Gary's. And they realise, yeah, they can probably trust him. Let's give him a job. You're a good bartender. And then, on the day of the contest, Woody gives Gary a letter he'd forgotten to give Gary, saying the contest had been moved up by 2 hours. So, of course, now there is panic. It is the time of the contest, and Woody reveals that actually, yeah, this was part of his plan. And he goes over to Cheers, and this is when things just go from crazy to crazier. Gary manages to go over to Cheers just in time, and he wins the contest, and he's happy, and he leaves. And then we find out that actually Woody was dressed as the judge and it was a fake contest, and the real contest begins a little later. But Gary comes back in, having presumably overheard this. Maybe he just suspected it. He did say that he realised when he got close to Woody, well, the judge, he realised it was Woody, but I imagine he would have been listening in anyway. And they have the real contest, and Gary's wins again. And Gary then leaves. And it turns out that that wasn't the real contest either. The judge this time was Carla's neighbour. And she paid him for doing this with money from Gary's wallet that she'd stolen when Gary came back in. And Gary comes in again, and it genuinely seems like he was aware that was also the fake contest. But no, he'd just come back in for his wallet, and then he left, and everybody is now whispering, kind of chant whispering, Gary won't win. And it was a delightful way to end it, and everything just was an absolute roller coaster. The second half of this episode was absolutely crazy, really thoroughly enjoyable. Definitely much better this time round than the previous time. Definitely puts me in a very good mood for watching the rest of the Bar Wars episodes. Needless to say, Bar Wars 2, The Woodman Strikes Back, is very well written, and ultimately, certainly the second half, the first half is fine, but the second half in particular is just absolutely fantastic.